Wrestling fans, are you ready? For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, let's get ready to rumble!
And now, please welcome at this time your hosts, Graham GSM Matthews and RJ Marceau. You're listening to the next era of wrestling radio. This is WrestleRant Radio.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WrestleRant Radio here today for September 12th, 2024. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. Big show here today. We got Drew McIntyre back on WrestleRant Radio for the first time in almost 2 years to talk about the Killers game out tomorrow as we speak on Friday, September 13th. That's a pretty big deal. Drew McIntyre making his theatrical debut alongside Batista, Scott Adkins. A lot of notable names in that movie coming out tomorrow. We have a great chat about it. My audio quality is not the greatest. I will say that out of the gate. When we did the interview 2 weeks ago, because I mentioned Bash in Berlin and being at Raw in Providence, which was 2.5 weeks ago, my mic was not completely hooked up, so the quality is not the greatest. I went off of my computer audio, which is obviously far inferior to the mic that I'm using right now. So it was a whole issue, but Drew, thankfully, you can hear pretty loud and clear, and it was a fun interview nonetheless. So we're going to have that start the show today. I'll give my thoughts on AEW All Out from this past weekend, and then we'll throw in Mr. Marceau for some chats on for a chat about Raw this past week, the 2024 PWI 500, SmackDown leaving Fox as of last week, and the potential pros and cons of Monday Night Raw returning to 2 hours. Before then, though, enjoy my exclusive interview with WWE superstar Drew McIntyre.
Graham Marine and Bleacher Report here speaking with Drew McIntyre. Ahead of the Killers game coming up September 13th. Drew, you're making your acting debut in the movie. How you doing, man? Thanks for taking the time.
I'm awesome. I just came straight from Raw in Boston to LA here, and I'm talking about my first movie in the Killers game. It's bizarre. It's wild. It's so much fun. And then I'm going to head back home for a minute. Then I'm going to jump to Germany. I'm going to wipe out CM Punk. This is a pretty perfect week.
Pretty crazy, man. I was at Providence last night at Raw seeing you interact with Punk, so I'm looking forward to the match this Sunday.
Yeah. Was I right or was I right?
Yeah,
CM Punk's scared of Drew McIntyre. He always attacks me from behind. What happened? What happened?
Yeah, I mean, he did run off.
He attacked me from behind.
Yeah, that is true. But listen, before we got Bash coming up this Sunday, but we do have the movie coming out on September 13th. Punk has been in his fair share of movies. You're looking to one-up him in the Killers game. As Roy
can you name three? Like, can you name any where at the actual movie theaters? No, you can't. That's the answer. I beat him in every way. Sorry, what was your question?
You are starring alongside Batista in the movie. This is your acting debut, as I mentioned earlier. How do you think you did in the film? Just talk about kind of your experience coming out of the Killers game.
I mean, first of all, it was just so much fun to reunite with Dave, who was so instrumental in my early career when I first arrived in WWE. And being such a big star and helping guide me, especially if I was putting a foot wrong. No one else would tell me. He was one of the ones that told me, here's some advice, here's what you need to know. Because back then in 2007, there was not so many people willing to help you, especially the top stars. And fast forward years later, he's the one that makes the call, gets me involved with the projects, looking after me again. And I've got JJ, the director, was just so unbelievable. Scott Adkins played my brother, the whole crew, just everyone was unreal. And I went in not knowing what to expect, and I came out like, wow, I had so much fun. This is not a world I necessarily saw myself in, especially during the peak of my career, but now I certainly can, and I'm excited about it.
Going into a movie like this, and obviously you've been with WWE doing the pro wrestling thing for over 20 years now, but going into the acting realm, obviously very different, a lot of similarities there, but like on your end, were there any misconceptions? Like you're going into it thinking, this is going to come easy to me, or maybe not so much. What misconceptions did you have coming out of the film?
Well, I certainly never thought it was going to come easy to me. It was quite the opposite of, oh man, this is going to be totally different, and I don't know what to expect. And I guess most people would have the thought of, I just hope I don't suck more than anything. But as soon as I got there, Dave was right on the scene, asking me if I was nervous. I told him yes. He told me he was nervous, which blew my mind after all the success he's had, all the diverse roles in big movies that he's been part of. So that helped relax me initially. And once I got in front of that camera and I saw that red light, my whole body just relaxed. I've basically grown up in front of the world on camera, and that's my comfort zone. And as soon as, that red light went on, I just relaxed instantly. I had fun with the character. JJ's right there just motivating me the whole time and allowing, kind of like in WWE, a lot of improv, a lot of freedom to just really go for it and be yourself. And the character is a big Scottish, brute that uses a lot of Scottish slang, a lot of swears. Isn't far off the real me. So it was so much fun to do. And seeing it back, it was weird because I enjoyed the movie, and then I saw myself, and I was like, okay, I seem relaxed. I seem okay. Let's see what the public think.
So you were filming this movie last summer as Rory McKenzie, obviously, as you were just talking about. And then you come back to the WWE world soon after, teasing the heel turn, the bad guy stuff.
I was doing both at the same time. I was on Raw, then Budapest, Raw, then Budapest.
Wow, that's crazy. And I feel like, with the filming for this role coming first, obviously the movie coming out now, you just mentioned, I feel like there is some similarities between your character in this movie and a lot of what we're seeing currently in WWE. On your part, is that intentional? What similarities can we draw between Rory McKenzie and Drew McIntyre on WWE television?
I don't know if I can compare the two that much.
Just as far as the personality, I feel like you come out of your shell.
Yeah, they both live their truth, let's say. That's very important to me in any aspect of my life. And I can see working on Killer's Game, wherever I can inject some certain level of truth, and I know going forward, whatever project might come my way, I'll find something that I can hang my hat on, and that's my truth. But for Drew McIntyre, me, it's all my truth. Everything I say, I 100% believe is based in fact. I defy anybody to say you lied here, or you were a hypocrite here, you weren't justified there, or this wasn't caused by trauma there, and there's not a logical explanation for what you do, because I'm very particular about the character, very particular about telling the truth. Even last night, you were in Providence, I almost did a bit, like it was in my head, like it could be funny, where I ask the people, tell people I don't really talk about sports much out here, American sports, but I follow basketball. And since I'm in Providence, we're close to Boston, it just happened in June. I would tell you I'm a Celtic fan. Imagine the cheers that would have happened if I said that. Oh, yeah. And I would have said, I just want to prove a point. That's how easy Punk lies to you all. But then at the same time, I was like, I just don't want to lie. Like, that's not what my character is. I tell the truth. And even to just prove a point that Punk lies that easy to you, and it would have been a fun moment for the crowd, I decided, I'm not going to do that because I just don't want to lie. That's not the character.
I feel like the pathos with everything you're talking about, the character that we're seeing currently in WWE TV, a lot of it, just in my own opinion, rooted in movies, television, obviously the Killer's Game as well. Was there anything kind of the reversal of what I asked earlier that you took from filming this movie that you now incorporate into your character in WWE? Maybe thinking at things or looking at things from a different perspective, perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps. And it's not something I consciously thought about, but bringing it up to me right now, just the timing of the two and the character evolution, yeah, absolutely. The lessons I learned from, JJ, Dave, Scott Adkins, who plays my brother, and just how they did things and discussed things and took a step back outside of, okay, this is what we're doing, let's look at it from this angle. Yeah, I certainly do that. And that's kind of across the board, I guess, in WWE as well. Like the way the creative process is now is very much open for, this is what we're thinking. What do you think? Is there something different? And I always, and again, the movie set and the way those guys think about things probably made me think more this way is, okay, this is the way it is. Let me step over here and look at it. Let me step over here, look at it. What if we did this? No one's going to see this coming. And it's going to get an emotional reaction, which is the number one thing we want in our world, but also in the movies. We want you to feel something.
Without giving anything away, I saw the movie earlier today, and I feel like any wrestling fan, they'll go out of their way to watch this movie. Anyone familiar with Batista's career and your career as well, they might pick out some moves in the scene that you guys share in the film. From your end, do you know, was that intentional? I may have seen a Claymore kick here and there, maybe a Batista bomb. I don't know if that was intentional. Anything you can share on that end?
I can say that it wasn't me, but there JJ with his decades-long stunt background, now directing his amazing stunt team, choreography team. They obviously did their research and put together, an awesome little fight scene that has Easter eggs for our fans who are going to watch it and go, ah, I'll say as much as a Glasgow Kiss. I'll tell everyone that.
Glasgow Kiss, yeah.
Where people will go, wow, that's one of Drew's moves in the wrestling, and to everybody else, it's just going to look visually impressive, so everybody's satisfied. But it's also servicing our fans, which is cool that the guys obviously went out of their way to place those moments for our fans, which are numerous across the world.
It's cool that you mentioned earlier that you were doing both at the same time, leading into the match with Gunther last year at SummerSlam, going back and forth, and you weren't gone for that long. But still, some people take months off at a time. You were doing both. You were pulling double duty. And this was obviously during that period where, the website's running wild. Is he staying? Is he leaving? What's the contract status? Obviously, we found out earlier this year we did renew for another couple of years at least. Talk about that and just the factor that the Killers game played and your decision to stay and maybe hold off on signing a new deal as far as doing more projects like this, because sometimes you may not get that creative freedom working under the WWE umbrella.
Yeah, I don't know if that necessarily played into things like the way things are now, and WWE is very open to, okay, what's the project? How does this help them, help us grow the brand? If everybody wins, they're very much want to be part of it, and this was a layup, and I'll always be involved with layups. I'll never do something I think is going to hurt me or hurt the company. So that really never factored into it. It was hilarious that my contract seemed like the only freaking contract that was on the internet every week for like a year straight. I was like, we've got other people, in this company, their contracts are, why is it always mine? It got to a point where, it was family. Like, I need to take time off. I've never taken time off. I've spoken about it publicly. My wife's sister passed, and it was a very difficult time for our family and her mother. And I said, okay, I've never taken time off in my life. I came from school to WWE, to getting fired, to working harder than ever, to come back to WWE. And she's been waiting 7 years for a honeymoon. We're 52 weeks a year, and I'm a crazy person when it comes to the workload. She's been very supportive, and when that tragedy happened, I was like, I have to take this time off at the end. That's the way it's going to go. And as time passed, we got into the character transition. Things were really clicking, and her mother and herself are living to live with the new normal. And even though I was very much of the mindset of I'm going to take some time at least, it got to the point where I was like, okay, let's revisit this. My wife and I talked about it, and she basically said, now's not the time to be going anywhere. Let's figure things out. And thankfully, Nick Khan, Triple H, were amazing about it. They're very understanding about the family aspect and what I need from the company right now, what I need from my family right now, what I need for perhaps outside projects right now. And we figured everything out, and everyone saw the video. Rock sent a nice little sword to celebrate the signing, and a nice little note as well. And to look at 10 years ago when I was fired from WWE because I didn't have a spot for Drew McIntyre, and then now we got to that point where we're having those talks and figuring things out so it works for everybody, and been part of my first movie. It's awesome, and a testament, I guess, to hard work, self-belief, and I tell everybody, whatever your goals, dreams are, if you put everything into it, leave no stone unturned, you're accountable to no one else but the person in the mirror, you can achieve anything.
I feel like between what we're seeing in the Killers game and what we're seeing right now in WWE, you would just have more fun being a heel. I mean, you did a great job of carrying the company as the top babyface, the top good guy during COVID, and you excelled in that role, obviously. But just as the bad guy, between what we see right now on Raw, like last night, and in the movie specifically, people will see it, is it safe to say, like, you're in your element as a bad guy, not only right now, but just in general?
I still wouldn't say I'm a bad guy. Some people might want to call me a villain.
Sure.
Because of my methods, but I never ever lie.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, bad guys do have more fun, and the truth is, in the role I was prior, like the kind of company guy, top babyface, especially during the height of the pandemic, they expected certain things from their top good guys at the time, smiling no matter what, even if you just lost the title and somebody did something horrific to you or your friend, and you just keep out going smiling. That's not the real me. That's not how I deal with things in real life, or how people in general would probably deal with those situations. So now to be able to react as a human being would react, and be able to tell these more deep layered stories, And the Bloodline storyline showed if you really take the time to develop these stories, develop these characters, we can have these deep layered characters like any other show on TV, except they have seasons. We're non-stop all year. We can go so deep with these characters if we truly lean into it, if you truly know who you are. And creative know exactly who you are. We can tell these amazing stories that make people feel like happy, sad, pissed off. We can do it all. And with McIntyre, the stories, especially what happened winning the title with no one there and losing in Cardiff because of the bloodline, and what one thing after another it felt like for a period that I didn't understand or I was upset with in real life, and now was able to channel into this character and suddenly start explaining, well, I feel this way because of this. Jey Uso shows up on Raw. Why is Drew upset? Drew, we like Jey now. He says yeet and he does the thing. We like him. Why don't you like him? His family ruined my life. Have you heard of trauma, PTSD? And we can actually, it's not black and white anymore. There's shades of grey. There's real human emotions, human reactions. I know who I am, and thankfully the creative know who I am, and we can tell this fun story and this journey we've been on.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to more movies from you, Mr. McIntyre. I know this is your first of many, and I'm looking forward to seeing you do more projects like this in the future. Hopefully this is part of the new deal, right? Being able to do more stuff like this.
Let's see what the future holds, but I'm excited about it.
Fingers crossed. But listen, I know Punk's got a couple movies on you. Hopefully you can get there at some point as well. This is a great...
This is a real movie. It's got a premiere and everything.
It does. That is true.
It's in the movie theaters.
It is in theaters. Listen, you got that strap match this Sunday. Best of luck, Drew. We look forward to it. I appreciate the time, man, as always. Take care.
Appreciate you, brother. Make sure you watch it on Saturday, though.
On Saturday. Why did I say Sunday? I feel like I'm still stuck in the Sunday mindset.
Me too. It took a while to get out of it. PLE and Saturday took me a while to adjust to, but I do have 10,000 of these eventually sticks.
Yeah, I know. Same here, man. Same here. Safe travels this weekend, dude.
Thank you, brother.
Big thanks to Drew for the time. Always an entertaining interview. That was our first chat, and I think a couple of years. We've had a handful of chats dating back to 2021, including in person at a house show a few years ago. But that was the first interview that we've done in a few years since the whole evolution of Drew McIntyre. So great time chatting with him. Check out the article version of that interview tomorrow on Bleacher Report, Friday, September 13th, Friday the 13th, coinciding with the release of the Killers game, available theatrically starting tomorrow as well. And the video of that same interview also available over at youtube.com/WrestleRant. So before we bring on in Mr. Marceau, I did want to give my quick thoughts on AEW All Out from over the weekend. I'm not going to do a full-on review like I did with All In 2 weeks ago, but I did want to share some thoughts on All Out and the subsequent Dynamite from Wednesday. But I did think overall All Out was an excellent event. Considering the quick turnaround time of only 2 weeks, last week was even worse. It was only 1 week. And I mentioned that in my predictions for the pay-per-view here on the show last week. But they pulled out a pretty good show. And AEW, at this point, you can't really doubt them on pay-per-view. I mean, even WWE shows are great, but AEW on pay-per-view in the past 4 years, more often than not, even with 4 hours of content for the main card alone. I mean, the main cards are 4 hours. The pre-shows are like an hour, hour and a half. It's a lot of fucking wrestling. But they always pull out and produce quality shows, and this one was no exception. The pre-show was completely pointless, but on the main card, they opened with MJF and Daniel Garcia. Really, really good match, got a ton of time. MJF did pull out the victory. Daniel Garcia attacking him afterward. Neither guy was on Dynamite. Apparently, we will not be seeing MJF for a while. Apparently, he's doing some sort of a movie or has another project going on. You might be wondering, well, then why did he go over? If he's not going to be around, why not just have him win? Clearly, they're going to continue the feud when he comes back. Garcia can beat him ultimately. And I think MJF, after losing the International Championship at All In, should have won here. And yeah, he could have afforded to take 2 back-to-back losses on pay-per-view, but I think it was completely fine that he went over in this match. Garcia got his, gave him his comeuppance afterward, and then he can always pick up that big win over MJF on pay-per-view or on TV at some other point down the road when MJF comes back. But I thought the match itself was great, though. The Young Bucks versus Claudio Castagnoli and Wheeler Yuta for the AEW World Tag Team Championship. I thought this was a very good match. I actually enjoyed this more than the match that the Bucks had with FTR and the Acclaimed back at All In. So I enjoyed this for what it was. The finish wasn't really in doubt. I kind of figured the Bucks would win, considering they put the match together on like fucking 3 days' notice. But it was fun for what it was. Will Ospreay and Pac going out there and just fucking killing it with the AEW International Championship on the line, as you would expect from those two. But they had a really, really fun match. I enjoyed that for what it was. Ospreay obviously going over, teasing a match with Ricochet afterward, as we would all expect. I don't know if we're getting at a Wrestle Dream or at another point, but I am looking forward to that when we get it. But this match was awesome. This was probably the show stealer for me, if not, the main event was crazy, but this was an amazing match. And then they followed that up with another excellent match. So you would think, like, following Ospreay and Pac, they would probably put like a cool down match after that. That was not the case here. Chris Statlander and Willow Nightingale went in there and fucking killed it as well in the Chicago street fight. Honestly, probably one of the more fun street fights that I've seen in AEW in recent memory. Maybe just because they had like a build behind it, an actual story. They've been fighting now for many, many months. Their storyline's been going on for almost a year now between Nightingale and Statlander. I was not expecting Statlander to go over. That was certainly a surprise to me. But the match itself was really, really good. I don't know if we're going to get more matches out of this. I didn't really give a shit that the CMLL Women's World Championship was not on the line. It was weird that it wasn't on the line because Statlander won that Eliminator about a month or two ago to earn that opportunity. So the fact that it wasn't on the line was weird. I mentioned that last week, but the match itself was fantastic. Okada successfully defending the AEW Continental Championship in a fatal four-way with Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, Konosuke Takeshita. Really, really good match. They are clearly saving Okada and Takeshita for another time at some point in the near future. They teased it again on Wednesday's Dynamite. Sign me the fuck up for that in a singles match, please. Mercedes Moné and Hikaru Shida, I was looking forward to coming into the show because their first match on Dynamite a month or so ago was really good. This match, not so much. For whatever reason, they did not click. They did not have good chemistry. A lot of awkward spots. I don't know if Mercedes was concussed or what, but Shida hit her finisher the first time. The katana, I believe is what she calls it, the kick to Mercedes. And it hardly connected. So she did it a second time and a third time and connected, I think, on the second and third time, and Mercedes kicked out at one. And mind you, that was Shida's finisher, was, whatever. So I thought that was weird. The finish kind of coming out of nowhere, wasn't really well executed. The crowd was quiet. This sucked. This was not very good. Maybe not sucked, it's probably too strong of a word, but it was definitely disappointing. Considering, again, and it's not like they're incapable of a bad match. Shida's awesome. Mercedes is obviously really good as well. And their first match did deliver about a month ago on Dynamite. So I don't know what went wrong here. The timing did suck, though, because Mercedes is already coming off a weak match at All In with Britt Baker, who we have not seen since then, by the way. And then she follows that up with a match with Shida that definitely fell well below the mark of what people were expecting. So that's unfortunate. Danielson and Jack Perry for the AEW World Championship was a very good match, probably Perry's best singles match in a while, if not ever. The outcome was never really in doubt, so that kind of hurt the match, the obvious outcome, but Perry did have a strong showing. Danielson delivering as always, good stuff. More memorable than the match itself was obviously the post-match angle, with the Blackpool Combat Club saving Danielson from Christian Cage cashing in his AEW World Championship opportunity. On Danielson, you had Perry out there with Luchasaurus at the same time, Killswitch, whatever you want to call him. So I thought that was cool. But that wasn't it, though. You had Blackpool Combat Club then turning on Danielson. So Moxley, Claudio, Marina Shafir, was that it? Was it just those three? I forget. But those three especially turning their backs on Danielson. Wheeler, Yuta, and Pac. Pac was out there as well. He's not a member of Blackpool Combat Club, but he has been aligned with Claudio and Yuta as 1/3 of the Trios champions in AEW, and they're still champions. Yuta did not go along with the attack. So he's still champions with two people that just attacked his mentor. So I don't know how they're going to handle that. But it was a very shocking angle. I certainly did not see that coming, and I'm curious to see where it goes. I thought the fallout on Dynamite wasn't great. The promo for Moxley was very good. The in-ring segments kind of left a little bit to be desired, but we are getting Moxley and Darby Allin, who he has been calling out for weeks now, at Grand Slam, with Darby Allin's AEW World Championship on the line. His AEW World Championship opportunity on the line. Danielson is the champion. Darby Allin is not. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense because Moxley said because of the attack, because they attacked him with a fucking plastic bag over his head. They attempted to suffocate this man with a plastic bag over his head. That was definitely too far. I wasn't super into that. It was certainly for the shock factor. I could have done without that on this show. The other shit that we saw in the unsanctioned steel cage match, which I'll get to in a moment, I mean, some of it was definitely over the top, but it was a lights out unsanctioned match. Okay, I kind of get it. The bag thing, I know it was a nod to Terry Funk. I think Eddie Kingston even said in an interview at one point a while ago that he wanted to do it in AEW, and Tony Khan said no. Well, Tony Khan finally said yes, it just wasn't to Eddie Kingston. So they did that here. Did not love that, but, they wrote off Danielson for a little while. I will mention this here, though. Like I said, Darby Allin and Moxley set for Grand Slam next month. Or not next month. It's in 2 weeks. It's happening in 2 weeks on September 25th. Allen's AEW World Championship opportunity that he earned from Royal Rampage back in July on the line in that match. He was supposed to challenge for the championship on that show. And they kind of made it sound like in that segment, oh, well, Danielson's out right now because of the attack at All Out. He won't be on that show, so therefore you can't challenge for the championship. Later on in that same show on Wednesday night, on Dynamite, Nigel McGuinness comes out, which was awesome, by the way, and he challenged Bryan Danielson to a non-title match at the Grand Slam edition of Dynamite. Now, he said it probably won't be for the championship. It won't be for the championship. He can't defend the title, but he's still challenging him to an actual match. I don't want to complain too much. I'm just happy we're getting that match finally. Nigel has wanted that match. He probably wanted it at All In last year, wanted it at All In this year, did not get it either time, but they are doing it before Danielson wraps up his full-time run. He just returned to the ring at All In, and I don't think Nigel's sticking around for a full-on run. I would be totally down for that if he did. I don't think he is. I'm just glad we're getting the match almost exactly 15 years removed from their last Ring of Honor match, literally almost exactly 15 years ago in New York, no less. I think it was the swan song for both guys in Ring of Honor back in 2009, because Danielson went on to WWE. Nigel almost followed him, but then he went to TNA instead because of the whole medical thing. That's pretty well documented. But anyway, I love the fact they're running it back, but I just wish this made more sense. I mean, literally in the same show, for Moxley to say, well, Danielson's not making it to All Out for you to challenge for the championship, and then he will be on that show because they said, oh, if Bryan can compete, Nigel will face him. Well, if Bryan can't compete, then why wouldn't he face Darby Allin? It just does not make sense. If you want to switch up plans, that's fine. I like this idea a lot more. Then just don't set up the Royal Rampage shit in July when you don't know what your creative plans are going to look like in September. That's probably why you don't do that, unless you know for a fact where you're going with certain things. I know plans change. They obviously did. But it's not like Danielson got hurt. I mean, Danielson's been around. They probably always intended for him to win the championship at All In. This was weird. So I'm glad we're getting Danielson and Nigel. I just wish the setup was better, but I'm just glad we're getting it at all. We're also getting the Young Bucks against the team of Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher on that show as well for the AEW World Tag Team titles. They won that Tag Team Casino Gauntlet on Wednesday's Dynamite. They really need to stop doing that match. I mean, it's a very fun match. They've done 4 in 5 months. And the one they did last night was the weakest one of the bunch. They cannot keep doing it as consistently and as regularly as they are because it's going to lose its mystique or whatever special factor it has left. Don't keep doing it. But yeah, 3 big matches for Grand Slam. I'm not going to that show. I've never gone to Grand Slam for the sole reason of, and I live in Connecticut. I've gone to a lot of shows in New York. 1, don't love the travel at this point. But 2, getting there is a fucking nightmare. I've been to a number of Mets games, which I take the exact same route to get there. By the time that Grand Slam is typically over, I would not be able to take the train back. That was always my biggest, scheduling conflict with going to Grand Slam. I could drive there, but driving from Connecticut, or I mean, I guess from anywhere to Queens, that part of Queens, unless you live in the area and you're comfortable with it and you're aware of it, you're familiar with the area, whatever, maybe a lot of people probably do that. I am not. I just remember driving there, not myself, but with someone else to a Mets game about a year or 2 ago, and it was a disaster. Like, traffic up the wahoo, and it was terrible. So, I would not want to go through that. I'm not going to that show, but I will be watching from the comfort of my own home for Grand Slam in a couple of weeks. So, I'm looking forward to that. But on this show, on All Out, I'll say this one last thing. Adam Page beating Swerve Strickland. Quote-unquote beating him. It was a lights-out match, technically meaning it doesn't count. So technically, Adam Page did not beat this man, but it was a great match, and they did go way over the top. But like you said a moment ago, all the controversy this week, AEW doing disgusting shit. I'm the first one to mention that sort of thing. This part didn't really bother me because it was an unsanctioned match. When they do it all the time with the flaming tables and garbage like that, yeah, it doesn't mean anything. But for an instance like this, for a year-long feud that is probably, in my opinion, that not even probably is AEW's best feud ever up to this point, then, I mean, it makes sense for them to be doing stuff like this in a match of that caliber. So I enjoyed the match. Adam Page barely surviving over Swerve. The syringe spot, again, definitely gross, not necessary, but it didn't bother me as much as the bag thing. Even the bag thing didn't bother me. I just thought, okay, I probably wouldn't have done that. What the fuck is going on here? The syringe thing didn't really even factor into the finish. I mean, it did, because then Adam Page hit him with a chair, but it's not like, oh, his lip was numb, so he couldn't say I quit. I don't know. It was kind of random. But for an unsanctioned match, aside from taking out a gun and shooting the man, I guess that's the best they could do. Whatever. But the match was very good. I thought it was the best part of the show. Match-wise, I thought it was Ospreay and Pac, if not Statlander and Willow. But the main event delivered. The overall show delivered. I really enjoyed All Out for what it was. So now we'll throw it to my conversation with Mr. Marceau, talking all the latest in the world of wrestling outside of AEW. Mr. Marceau, brother, what's going on?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing all right. Are you still reeling from the Julia in-ring debut on Tuesday? Still rewatching it a couple times?
Oh, I loved it.
I know we talked about Julia at length last week, so I'll keep this brief. But we saw her for the first time in the ring on Tuesdays. NXT against Chelsea Green, the same woman she attacked in her NXT TV debut last Tuesday. Julia is here in NXT, and already she looks like a complete star. What were your thoughts on, again, we already saw her in No Mercy. We saw her on TV last week confronting Roxanne Perez. But your thoughts on her in-ring debut on Tuesday night?
I thought it was good. I thought it was a good start for her. I mean, Chelsea Green, I thought was the perfect opponent for her, and she looked great. Yeah,
I think she's a shoo-in to become the next NXT Women's Champion, so we'll see on that big CW debut show in a couple of weeks on October 1st. A lot of rumblings as far as what they're going to be doing on that show. They also set in stone, as we talked about last week, pretty obvious even a week ago. But, Pete Dunne falling to Trick Williams in the last man standing match on Tuesday. It will be Trick Williams challenging Ethan Page for the NXT Championship on that CW debut show in Chicago. CM Punk will also be there. He'll be on NXT first next week, and also rumblings that the Motor City Machine Guns could be showing up on that show specifically. And I've heard that for months now, so seeing is believing, but looks like it will be a stacked show in Chicago. Before I get your thoughts on some stuff that happened on Raw on Monday night, not a lot to talk about this week, really. I lied when I said there's a lot to talk about. There really is not. But I do want to get your thoughts on this. I know we talked about it last year. I feel like we probably talk about it most years. And for the record, as I always say, as everyone always kind of mentions, it is worth mentioning, it's always based off of wins and losses. The PWI 500 Top 10, well, really the 500 came out this week, but the Top 10 was a subject of conversation on Tuesday when it was released for 2024. I think the ranking period, the criteria goes from June 30th to June 30th, I believe, 2023 to 2024. So it's not all of 2024, but it did get people talking this past week as far as who ranked where and whatnot. So I'll run down these quickly. And again, you can only debate so much because, again, they go off of, championships won. All kayfabe stuff. It's not based off of shit that happens outside of the ring. They also go off of how many times you wrestled. So as a spoiler alert, Roman Reigns is not on this list. And that sounds wild because he is still one of the biggest stars in all of wrestling. He just wrapped up his 4-year run as undisputed WWE champion, a couple of months ago, and he was in the top 10 last year, if not near number 1. But he was not in the top 10 this year. So 10 was Mystico, the former Sin Cara from WWE. He's actually had a great year in CMLL from what I understand. 9 was Gunther. I don't know why he wasn't higher, even though he was Intercontinental Champion for most of the year. He suffered 1 loss in that time. I don't really get that. But Gunther was number 9, 8 Jon Moxley, 7 MJF, 6 Damian Priest, 5 Tetsuya Naito from New Japan. I think now the current New Japan, or the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, if I'm not mistaken. He beat Moxley for that belt back at Forbidden Door. 4 Seth Rollins, 3 Will Ospreay, 2 Swerve Strickland, number 1 Cody Rhodes. So like I said, a lot of people talking about this past week. Any immediate thoughts in this top 10 500, Mr. Marceau? Because my top takeaway was that Gunther being number 9 just sounded completely fucking ridiculous.
I literally was just about to say that. How the hell is Gunther that low? I mean, I feel like like you said, he had 1 loss all year. He was all over WWE TV. I mean, it's kind of crazy that he was number 9. I mean, I figured when you said Roman was on the list, I figured Cody be number 1, so that doesn't overly surprise me. Who was number 2?
Swerve Strickland. That one makes more sense because obviously
I think Moxley being ahead of Gunther especially kind of annoyed me.
Oh no, definitely, yeah. No, Moxley being 8 doesn't make a whole lot of sense because, like I said, I think the grading period goes from June to June. Swerve got really hot at the end of last year in the feud with Adam Page. I don't know how many matches he was winning early on during the grading period, but if it was only like a 25% period of the time, or even 20%, I think that kind of outweighs anything he did or did not do early on in the grading period. So him being number 2 is a great call. Will Ospreay obviously having a very good debut year so far in AEW. Rollins 4, I don't really watch New Japan, so Naito being 5, I can't really speak to that at all. Moxley, though, I that one kind of surprised me. I mean, honestly, and it's not even an AEW thing. Even Damian Priest, who I think is great, he's really broken out on his own this past year. I mean, he just split from the Judgment Day at SummerSlam, won the World Heavyweight Championship. But what did he really... I know he was tag team champion for 6 months with Finn Balor, probably more than that, actually, before they dropped the belts at Mania and he became World Heavyweight Champion the next day. I can't remember many singles matches that Damian Priest was winning while he was Mr. Money in the Bank. I felt like he lost a lot of those matches. So him being ahead of a guy like Gunther, who was Intercontinental Champion for most of the grading period, and then went on to win King of the Ring the following month, unless it's a case that he didn't wrestle as many matches as Damian Priest, even that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, even like you said, I guess I didn't even think of Priest, depending on the period that they're ranking on. Like you said, he didn't win a ton of Mr. Money in the Bank. He was kind of an afterthought. Yeah, he won the belt at Mania, but that was, I don't know, whether there's 4 months left of this whole grading period. Like you said, Gunther was champion all year, lost the belt, won Money in the Bank, or won King of the Ring, and then was going in to the end of this period of basically being the number one contender going for the World Heavyweight Championship. I think maybe just not the sexy pick. I don't know, but, I mean, the fact that he was that high is crazy to me.
Yeah, that is pretty wild. I mean, even Roman Reigns, I know he doesn't wrestle consistently, but that's really what it comes down to. I mean, I can't even say that he wrestled more than Brock did when he was world champion like a decade ago, because I don't think he did. I think from June to June, his last match was obviously at WrestleMania. He wrestled at the Rumble. Before that, you'd have to go back to Crown Jewel, I think, for the last match that he had against LA Knight. SummerSlam against Jey, I think would count in the grading period. Not a whole lot of matches other than that, so that's probably why. But even MJF, I guess the fact that he was world champion for the latter half of 2023 is why he's even in the top 10, because you also have to consider he was gone for the first half of 2024. He was gone for like a good 5-6 month period, while they probably would have been grading. And again, they based all of this on kayfabe stuff, win-loss records, which I don't have in front of me, so it's really not worth debating for more than a couple of minutes than what we're doing right now. But always creates conversation. Every single year does the PWI 500 top 10. I didn't really read the rest of it, but the top 10 always gets people talking. From Raw on Monday night, they were in Calgary, the same actually building that the Canadian Stampede show was held back in 1997. A newsworthy show for a couple different reasons. The number one reason I'll save for the end here. But Bret Hart did make an appearance on Monday, the two-time WWE Hall of Famer, having a segment with Sami Zayn and with Gunther. Good segment here. How fucking funny was it that Gunther threw in that Goldberg line? That was the best part, probably. Not even the segment itself, but probably the entire show. I can't believe they actually went there with the Goldberg mention that Bret Hart returned on Monday.
Oh, it tickled me. I fucking died laughing. I mean, obviously, you'd have to be somewhat tuned in to get the reference. My dad had no idea what he meant, but like, I was dying laughing.
Especially coming off of the WCW doc they did, not WWE, but that Who Killed WCW docu-series a couple months ago, where Bret spent a majority of that documentary just completely shitting on Goldberg, and he's done that for years. Anyway, obviously, as we know, but that specifically was still fresh, so I thought that was great. We had a new Intercontinental Championship #1 contender crowned on Monday night. That being Jey Uso, which we already expected. We've already spoken at length about it, so there's really nothing new to say here beyond what we've already said. They haven't announced when the match is taking place. At one point, they hinted at it happening next week. I think that'd be way too soon. I don't think it is next week. I thought it was Bad Blood, but I haven't seen a graphic yet, so I don't know. But to kind of reiterate what we've already said, is it safe to say that Jey Uso is just simply being built up again to lose whenever it matters most? Or is there a chance, maybe not in their first encounter, but it was said at one point on Monday in a backstage segment, maybe I'm thinking of Raw Talk, but they did say at one point anyway, maybe even during the main event, that Jey Uso made it his goal to win singles gold in 2024. We know he's gotten a million different opportunities and has lost every single one. But I would just find it hard to believe if they would continue to bring that up and then he just doesn't win gold this year. So I feel like there could be a chance where he does beat Braun Breaker for that belt, only to lose it back to him, maybe at the Rumble or something, I don't know. But I don't know, Mr. Marceau. I'm holding out hope here that Jey Uso could become Intercontinental Champion at some point in the next couple of months.
He needs it. I mean, we talked about this before. You said, I mean, he keeps winning all these number one contender matches and loses every title match that has mattered so far. So, I mean, he needs it. Like, if not, he's just the biggest B-plus player of all time. It's more than Strowman. Like, and I mean, you got to win eventually. If not, like, he's so over. I just feel like he has to win. Like you said, they've kind of been hinting at like that was his goal for the year. So if he doesn't, he's just, I don't know. If you have a goal and you don't achieve it, guess what? You're a loser. So, I mean, he's kind of all over the place too. Like he's doing this, but he's also like with the Judgment Day, doing like tag team stuff too a little bit and kind of siding with them. So, like you said, maybe he gets help and he can win like quickly and then drop the belt. Like he doesn't need it the long reign, but something to hang his hat on. Like Jesus Christ. So said he was going to win Money in the Bank, didn't happen. Said he was going to win King of the Ring, didn't happen. Said he was going to win a title, hasn't happened yet. So he needs something. So maybe a quick reign would be nice. And I mean, even if like you said, if it was Raw and he won it and then lost it right back at Bad Blood, I mean, at least you'd have it for something.
Yeah, I mean, just even temporarily, you got to give the guy a win. I think it's better than having him go in there and lose whenever it matters most. Like, he has to at least win the big one. Like, Jeff Hardy was never world champion. In WWE and TNA, he was champion for like a couple months, actually, when he won the championships. The world titles, that is. But in WWE, whenever Jeff Hardy was world champion, like, he got that first big win back in 2008 at Armageddon, a great visual. Lost the belt, month later back to Edge. I think he was world heavyweight champion twice in 2009. Not one of those reigns lasted 5 minutes. The other one lasted a month. I mean, I think Jey Uso, maybe not even with the world heavyweight title, because I've said before, I just personally do not see him on that level despite how over he is. But I think in the mid-card level especially, he is an upper mid-carder. That cannot be denied. He's got to win either the United States or the Intercontinental title at some point very, very soon. And unless they do some sort of a trade or whatever, in the next couple of months, which I don't see that happening either, he's probably staying on Raw, and he's got to win that championship. So I'm glad he won on Monday. That's step one, but he's been at step one a lot. He's been number one contender a lot in the last year plus. Now he's got to win when it matters most, and I think he will. I think he will at some point. That is my prediction, because they kind of heavily teased the fact that if he does not win the championship at some point this year and fulfill that goal, they basically said what you said out loud, they said it quietly, you said it out loud, that he would be a loser. So, I don't know. I wouldn't do that myself, where you would have him lose and then just move on. Because I don't even really know what you would do. Sami Zayn's currently busy with Gunther. We didn't talk about that last week, but your thoughts on that, Sami Zayn being next in line for the World Heavyweight Championship? Because I think it makes perfect sense with Sami having beaten Gunther at Mania. Gunther still has to avenge that loss.
Yeah, no, I think storyline-wise, it makes the most sense. He's the last one to beat Gunther. I mean, deserves a title shot. Did they announce it? Is it at Bad Blood, or they haven't made any kind of actual announcement yet?
They haven't made it official because Gunther keeps saying no. But I imagine it will probably happen at Bad Blood, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. Like you said, I think it's kind of honestly like the perfect booking situation for now. He beat Gunther, he deserves a title shot.
I agree. Speaking of Bad Blood, though, they did make 3 matches official on Monday. Not that one, but they did make 3 other matches official. Rhea Ripley challenging Liv Morgan again for the Women's World Championship. Damian Priest and Finn Balor 1-on-1. And CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, as we all expected for months now, inside Hell in the Cell. And Adam Pearce kind of made it clear that it will be the blow-off to their lengthy feud dating back to the beginning of the year. With Rhea and Liv and Damian and Finn, they've kept this Judgment Day drama interesting for long enough. Do you think both of these matches will mark the end of this respective rivalry, or do you think it might just be maybe the end of Rhea and Liv, but not Damian and Finn? Because this is their first match for Damian and Finn, so I feel like we could see more from them, but not necessarily Rhea and Liv.
Yeah, I think it should be the end for Rhea and Liv. I think, like you also kind of hinted there, it's only Damian and Finn's first match. I'd be surprised if they just blew it off right here. But, I mean, if they continue that, then I don't know how you don't continue Liv and Rhea and that whole kind of story as well. So, yeah. I hope that part's done. But, like you said, if you continue it, it'd still be Judgment Day, new versus them two. So, I don't know how exactly you'd move from that. But I'm kind of done with Liv and Rhea at this point.
I mean, if they want to do one more match, I feel like Rhea's got to win the belt back, because if she loses again, you would keep her in chase mode, but I just feel like the feud would be in the same spot where she's chasing Liv for another month until, like, Crown Jewel or Survivor Series, or I guess you could do another match on Raw between the two, but I don't know. This would probably be it for me as well. You got to give some of the other women in the division some shine here, because they've been having this story go on for a while, and it's been very entertaining, but they got to start getting Lyra Valkyria back in the mix, and maybe Io Sky and women like that. We mentioned it before, but Punk and Drew making that official inside Hell in the Cell, it just makes sense. They even alluded to it on commentary that Bad Blood show will mark the exact 27-year anniversary of the first ever Hell in the Cell match between Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker back at the inaugural Bad Blood in 1997. So that just making sense as well, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I sent you the Bad Blood 2003 vignette yesterday. I just got the juices flowing, so makes sense on that end too.
The only difference is they're not using Headstrong as the theme song video package, the song for the video package.
Electric.
They should. I mean, listen, bring back that music, and some of the songs they use in 2024 are not bad at all, specifically for NXT, but listen, bring me back. I think it's Trapped. I think that's the name of the
Trapped sings a song, yeah.
Yeah. That's a great fucking 03 band right there. Man, yeah, that's the best part about that video package. It's the best video package, definitely for a Hell in a Cell match I think they've ever made. And that might be the worst Hell in a Cell match they've ever done. Or one, not the worst, but like one of the worst from that time period specifically. Triple H and Kevin Nash, 03. I mean, I don't even remember anything about the match. But that video package I will never forget.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even tell you what happened. I mean, I assume Triple H had to have won, because that's just what happened.
Oh, yeah.
So you said match-wise, I have fucking no idea what happened.
But that video package was hype, so even if the matches did not deliver, they would get you excited.
It's so good.
It's a great video package. Maybe they could do something. They got to come up with a great video package for Punk and Drew, and I know they did for the SummerSlam match. I remember watching the one for that match, and they recapped the initial injury to Punk, and Punk fucking over McIntyre on 3 different pay-per-views, and it was a really good video package. They got to come up with something even better for this one, with it being the big blow-off at Hell in the Cell. That is my hope here. Last two things for you, Mr. Marceau. Starting tomorrow, SmackDown, as we speak right now anyway. Starting tomorrow, Friday night, SmackDown headed back to USA Network for the first time in almost exactly 5 years. Their 5-year run on Fox is over, and it's created a lot of conversation, more so last week when the Fox era ended. Was this a successful run, in your opinion, especially being a football guy and watching a lot of sports on Fox, and you can kind of attest to the promotion, or lack thereof, of WWE on their network, and as someone, obviously, who doesn't watch as much Fox as probably you do for all the sports stuff, even I have seen a lot of promotion for WWE on that channel in the last 5 years, and I know people that have talked about WWE more because it's on a bigger platform, and now they're leaving Fox and heading back to USA Network, at least for SmackDown. Your overall analysis and assessment of SmackDown on Fox, and I guess you can't really say it was a success if they're now headed back to USA. If Fox really wanted them to stay, they would have offered them more money to stay, and that's just not happening. But as someone who watches Fox, your overall assessment of SmackDown's run on the network in the last 5 years?
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, I think it's just, I think live sports, just outside of WWE, I think statistically probably does better for the network, because I already saw, like, this weekend, or they're promoting it last weekend, I guess, going to this weekend, that they're back doing college football again at that 8 p.m. time slot. So I just feel like that's kind of where their eggs are in. It's all in the actual live sporting, so maybe they just felt like it wasn't needed anymore. I'm not quite sure. I thought, like you said, but I think it, I don't know what the rating wise, but it's a national, it's a big cable like station, so I think ratings wise it had to have worked better than what they were doing on USA. But I don't know, I feel like they did try their best to promote it, but I just don't think the audience goes hand in hand sometimes.
It's interesting, though, because, and maybe you can speak more on this as far as rating-wise, and like you said, live sports on Fox and big networks like that. But Fox signed WWE, SmackDown, to a massive deal 6 years ago that went into effect 5 years ago. And at the time, it was great for wrestling, it's great for WWE, and they also got a massive rights increase on USA for Raw to stay there with NBC. but the product was fucking terrible. And now the product is just so much better. There's obviously so much buzz around wrestling in general, but specifically WWE. And Fox, we don't know exactly what went on, but they're obviously opting not to renew. WWE getting more money to go back to USA. You would think it'd be the other way around. It's just kind of interesting the way that it works. Now, obviously, their first at least 2 years on Fox were terrible. I mean, even the COVID stuff speaks for itself. There really wasn't much they could do there. But like the first even 6 months on Fox before COVID hit was awful. Like some of the worst programming in SmackDown's history. And then it's obviously improved under Triple H, specifically because of the Bloodline in the past 2 years. I'm just kind of surprised with the timing working out the way that it did, that they would sign such a massive deal back in 2018 when the product was at arguably its all-time worst, and then not, opt to renew in 2024 when the product is so much better.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I guess it just really depends on what they're looking at. Sport-wise, I think they changed, especially for college football, I think they changed a couple of their broadcasts and who they were working with. So maybe that just changed the scheduling as well. But like I said, I bet you whatever they have on Friday nights would do better than I would assume better than 2 million views, like they were getting for SmackDown. But I guess, like you said, SmackDown when they first signed on was terrible. I have like night terrors of the fucking Thunderdomes in my head right now, just thinking about it. But I mean, like you said, I guess it's just at this point they just didn't see it worth it for them. I mean, I feel like that's how it works, right? Like they look at the numbers, like I guess it's just not going to work out, and they go their way and they go their own separate way. But I mean, product's definitely about a lot better hands now than it was when they first signed on, and I don't know the ratings exactly, but I assume they're doing better ratings now than what they were doing at the time as well. So, I mean, we'll see. But, I mean, yeah, like I said, I feel I can see like Bray Wyatt pointing at the Fiend pointing at the Russell. I have it stuck in my head right now, and it hurts.
That's funny that you said that. That's not even the worst of it, though. You're skipping over the dog food. Baron Corbin and Roman Reigns lasted a good 4 or 5 months on that fucking network when they first went to Fox. Like, it was a lengthy feud that dominated SmackDown. That Brock beating Kofi in 5 seconds. I mean, how could you forget such great programming such as that? Cain Velasquez coming in for a couple of weeks. I mean, come on.
I totally forgot about Cain Velasquez. Jesus, that's so bad.
That first show was a trip. It would be funny, though. I'm sure you've seen the rumors that, AEW has yet to finalize that, Warner Brothers deal, and they're obviously going to make it official very soon. Just people continue to talk about it. I'm not really sure why, just because, and we've mentioned it too a few times, but it's like every fucking day I see something about it. It's like, all right, they are probably going to stay with Warner Brothers. It's just more a matter of when than if they will make it official. Let's just wait to see if it's official or not, and I imagine it will be, but I don't know. There's really no surprise there. But it did come out this past week. There might be talk about another new AEW show, which would be incredibly unnecessary. AEW Shockwave, and not only would they be making another show, I don't know if it would be Dark 2.0, I don't know, but they're making another show, reportedly, and that's not even a report, actually. They did file for the fucking patent trademark for that show. But it might be on Fox. Now, I had seen earlier, it may not be on Fox necessarily. They might be working with Fox because they might not have that exclusivity deal with Warner Brothers this time around. And it might just be on FS1, which, what does that even really mean? I mean, anytime SmackDown, a much bigger show than whatever the Shockwave show is going to be, which I think would be an hour, did, a couple 100,000, maybe 700,000 viewers at most on FS1. It's not like SmackDown brought the 2 million people from Fox over to FS1, because I don't think everyone gets FS1 anyway. So another new AEW show on FS1, that just sounds, again, incredibly unnecessary to me. Even though they have a massive roster, the amount of shows that they have, I just feel like they're going the WWE route circa 2017, 2018, where they think more content is better, whereas in reality, it's really just watering down their product.
That sounds literally terrible. My stomach hurts just thinking about how bad that sounds. I mean, I just don't understand, like, why would... I don't know. Their product right now is like the worst it's ever been. Like, why would you want another show? That's what I don't get. Like, why do they need another show?
Unless they were to replace one of their existing shows with a new show, which is like, doesn't really accomplish anything, really. You just call it Rampage, and instead of Rampage, it's Shockwave, whatever. I don't know. I also just don't really see
Am
it.
I wrong? Like, the product is the lowest it's ever been. Why would you want another show?
No, that's what I agree. I agree with that. The roster is also probably the biggest it's been, so that might be in Tony Khan's eyes his way of rectifying that to get everyone on the show, everyone has a spot, everyone gets TV time, which, I mean, I can't say I really agree with that mindset because no one watches Ring of Honor. Rampage has not meant anything in years. Collision at this point doesn't really mean much, so why would you add another show? I mean, that's a valid question.
I mean, that's why I'm asking you. I mean, you're the expert. I don't know.
I don't know.
They can't sell out arenas. Why would you add another show? The ratings have never been lower. I mean, I guess Tony has unlimited pockets, but Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really understand the idea behind that one. It is happening because, again, like I said, they did trademark AEW Shockwave. For what reason, I guess we'll find out very soon, but I don't know. Between the shows they already have on Wednesdays and Fridays and Saturdays and the pay-per-views, and they have Ring of Honors on Thursdays. And they could even bring back the dark shows because they're not exclusive anymore with Warner Brothers, which is why they got rid of them in the first place, which was a fucking godsend. But really, they just rebranded Dark as Ring of Honor Television. It's the same exact matches. So.
I was going to say, I didn't watch a ton, but I was on Twitter last night and I saw that Sammy Guevara came back and he was the Ring of Honor Tag Team Champion. And I had to Google. I said, who the fuck is he the champion with? And I saw Dustin and I belly laughed for probably 10 minutes.
Yeah, Sammy Guevara did resurface last night. He is one half of the Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions. That might have been per his own request, but it doesn't change the fact Ring of Honor also has not a whole lot of equity at this point. Maybe that's the Ring of Honor show, but even then, I'm not sure how many people would be there for that, what the audience would be like, for a show like that. So, I don't know. I guess we'll find out very soon. On the subject, though, the last thing I'll ask you about, less is indeed more. And the biggest thing that came out of Monday's Raw was not anything that happened in the ring. It was not a pay-per-view announcement. It was a small line they threw in there that they later made official on Twitter soon after. That Raw, starting October 7th, is returning to the 2-hour format only for the remainder of the run on USA Network. But listen, dude, I don't give a fuck. 2 months, 3 months, whatever it's going to be is better than nothing. This would mark the first ever string, or really just first ever 2-hour show in general for WWE Raw since 2012, the week before Raw 1000. I don't think there has been a single show since then that has been under 3 hours. It's either been 3 hours or more. And they're going back to 2 hours, albeit briefly, because I think that was when their original deal with USA was supposed to expire. And they're like, listen, we'll keep you until the Netflix thing goes into effect in January. But by doing that, we're going to make it 2 hours. I don't know what fucking programming they're putting in the third hour where Raw would be. That would get much higher ratings than Raw. I don't know if it's Grizzly Knows Best. I know he got arrested. I don't know. But
hey!
Fuck that show. Fuck him. Fuck that show. It's trash. They ruined my precious USA Network. But that being said, they're going back to 2 hours. I see this. We'll talk about the pros and cons in a second. But personally, I see this as nothing but a massive positive.
I mean, I see it as a positive. I saw a lot of weeping on Twitter. I don't call it X, so it's Twitter still, people.
It is Twitter, yeah.
But I saw a ton of people bitching about it, and I was just like, they had, like, somewhat valid points, or, like, a valid thought, I guess. But at the end of the day, it's like, maybe we'll have less drivel and, like, these random segments that don't really mean much. If they have 2 hours, like, they can actually kind of, like, compact and put good shit. Like, instead of, like, putting 3 hours worth of TV, I think it'd be easier putting 2 hours of TV on because you're not, like, trying to, like, stretch things out and, like, it's not as I feel like boring, I guess is the best way to say it. I think it's a good thing. I mean, people like, oh, what about the women's division? Oh, like, we're not going to have we barely get as much as we do now. Like,
you figure it out.
Yeah. They'll figure it out.
You have to figure it out. Listen, SmackDown is 2 hours, and SmackDown is not a great show every single week, but it's at least more bearable because it's only 2 hours. I mean, Raw, when it was only 2 hours before they went to 3 hours, was not that much better than when Raw went to 3 hours because the product was shit regardless back in 2012, and 2011 had its moments, but largely, the last couple of years before Raw went 3 hours, it really wasn't a great show anyway, but going 3 hours, again, I mean, you're a sports guy, you watch football games, but I think anyone can attest to the fact that watching anything, whether it's sports, a movie, wrestling, whatever, any television show, is probably a whole lot easier for 2 hours than it is for 3. And that's just the attention span of people nowadays. People tune out. Someone had asked me, not asked, but had said to me, I'm surprised that it's 8 to 10 and not 9 to 11, which is what Raw was back in the day. I think it makes more sense, actually, personally, to have it be 8 to 10 just because, that's what people have known it to be for the last 12 years. And if it starts at 9, then people turn on at 8. They may not come back at 9. At least they're watching at 8. They could turn it off at 10, which is what it's going to be. So I think that just makes more sense. But on that same note, though, it is honestly scary. And this is life because we're getting older. But it is honestly scary to think there is a whole audience of people, because you mentioned people, not the vast majority, but there were a fair amount of people on Twitter that only know Raw for being 3 hours, that have watched for the past 5 years or 10 years. If you've been a wrestling fan for 10 years, you have not seen in live, I didn't live through the Attitude Era, so I get this to a certain extent, but people have never seen Raw as a 2-hour show. So they might just think less is worse, and this might be a worse show. That's kind of a scary thought, to think that they've never lived through a 2-hour Raw, and that's about to be a reality in about a month.
No, yeah, I think, honestly, like you said, keep it 10 to 11, please. Because I was the fan when it was 9 to 11 on TNN, and it was painful. I'd watch till 10 and then go to bed and just tape the rest. 11 o'clock's fucking late. I'm even now, the chance I see 11 o'clock are very slim to none nowadays, even with the 3 hours. But, like you said, I think 2 hours is better. Not even attention span, but like you said, after 3 hours, like I said, movies, even sporting events, it does get tiresome at some point. Like, you're either watching a ton of commercials or you're just like, geez, it's just taking forever. With live sports, it's a little different, especially with how everything is on social media now. Like, if you're watching a football game, you kind of have to watch it live because there's so many spoils or so many things are going on. So, I try my best to tape and kind of breeze through commercials. Like, fucking hate commercials, but it is what it is at this point. But like you said, with Raw especially, 2 hours is better than 3.
I know you already touched upon this, but I think the concerns of, I said potential cons earlier, of less TV time for the women, or really just in general for the entire roster, because they do have a big roster for Raw, more so than SmackDown, because they knew it was a 3-hour show. Now, maybe not, we may not be seeing Cruz del Toro and Joaquin Wilde in matches on Raw every single week, which we don't really know anyway. So it might be worse off for people like Alpha Academy, and the matches might not go quite as long as they've been going. Like, we get longer matches on Raw. That's just a fact, because it's a 3-hour show, so they have more time to kill. The commercials don't really matter, because we're still getting commercials. It's just less commercials, because you have, an hour less, so that doesn't really change. It's not like we're getting more commercials. It's less commercials. But the timing thing, I feel like you said, I feel like if you can put together a strong, tight 2-hour show, would be better than even some of the best Raws in 2024 are still boring to a certain extent, because you still have to fill some of those 3 hours with boring, unnecessary shit. Like, even on Monday's Raw, which that overall was a good show, a match such as Finn Balor and Rey Mysterio, which was a fine match, didn't really serve much of a purpose. They had a non-finish. They wanted to put more heat on Finn, but he was already on the show earlier in the night. Like, when you eliminate that third hour, people don't have to appear in as many segments. They don't have to pull double duty as much. I just don't really see the overwhelming negatives to this, honestly. Because, again, like you said, for anyone complaining, these people are going to get less time, on SmackDown, they already have that issue, or quote-unquote issue, of 2 hours. So you just got to figure it out.
Yeah, no, I think you just need to take the list of your roster, fucking put guys, girls on each side, rank them, and then from there, you look at the time and plan out your show. I think if anything, with the 2 hours, maybe you can kind of plan the shows better weekly, just because you can maybe do a couple VTRs or backstage segments to set up things next week. So it's we might get a quick person on the show just for a little bit, but then next week they have a match coming up or something like that. I feel like I said, people are worried about the women's division. Realistically, outside of Liv and Rhea right now in Raw, there really isn't a ton that's really interesting going on anyways. The whole Shayna group, no thank you. They I will say that's probably Raw's biggest Achilles heel right now. They really don't have any single women, that's really, who would even contend at this point? I like Lyra, but they really haven't done a ton with her lately.
No.
Natalia's that's back. They got Damage Control, but they're kind of doing, or they were in the tag team scene, so I guess we'll see, but I think it's a challenge for, even on SmackDown, they have a ton of women, it's not like they're doing a ton with them, but, you just gotta, plan it out and see what you can do from there, so, I'm happy with 2 hours. I mean, who knows what's going to happen when they go to Netflix? I mean, are they going back to 3? They're going to stay with 2? I guess we'll see. But I think for the end of the year, going just to 2 hours, it's a change I'm willing to take.
I think you hit the nail right on the head when you said, like, specifically with the women's stuff. It's not that I want to see less women's stuff, but more time does not always equate to quality time. And this goes for anyone on the roster, not just the women. But just because some of the women, specifically, Pure Fusion Collective, get television time every single week, which is better than no TV time, but they're just not over. Like, what they're doing with said time, and I'm not talking about Sonya herself or Shayna or Zoe or whatever. It's not their fault necessarily. But they're on the shows a lot. They're on the shows every single week. And consistency is key. I will preach to that. But like what they do at this time, what WWE has them do at the time, I should specifically say, is not memorable. No one cares. I mean, if you were to take away those matches and segments from these shows, the show would be no better or worse off. If anything, it would be better off. I mean, it's certainly not worse off. But just because you have 5 women's matches on the show doesn't mean... More doesn't always mean better. It's the age-old expression, quality over quantity. And that goes with the men, too. But I'm just using the women specifically as an example because Pure Fusion Collective's on the show every single week, and no one gives a fuck. They're not doing anything entertaining. I can remember a time where 4 years ago at this point, where they were having Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville feud. And that was on SmackDown. That was not a 3-hour show. That was a 2-hour show. They had one of the best women's programs in the past 10 years up to that point, and that was on a 2-hour show with limited segments. On Raw, they're just being put in matches that no one gives a fuck about. I mean, she gets the occasional mic time and gets heat for it. Largely, no one cares. So I think that is something, like you said earlier, multiple times, I think it will challenge them, honestly. With 3 hours, you can get lazy and get everyone on the show, but that doesn't mean they're going to get over through that. With 2 hours, you are challenged to put the more meaningful stuff on the show and make the most of the time that you have. And they're already doing that with SmackDown, so I don't understand why they can't do that with Raw, too.
No, I agree. I think you nailed it perfectly, honestly. I just think people think, you got to get them on the show, but just because they're on the show doesn't mean they're doing good things. Like you said, consistency is nice. Like, the more you see them out there, like maybe they'll connect with the audience.
Yes.
But like you said, the whole Pure Fusion collection, like it's just not good. They're not feuding with anyone that's really interesting. I like Damage Control, but that doesn't make me like hate this group. Like, if anything, I just like get off my TV. I feel like I like Sonya. I think with Shayna and Zoe specific, I feel like they've kind of, especially Shayna, it's like been there, done that. I just kind of overseeing them on TV, but at least they're trying. But like, you need a pivot. It's just like the women's championships, the tag team championships. Like, when are you going to finally pivot and realize like you've kind of tried everything in the toolbox? Like, it's just time to move on. Like, I get like not everything works, but like just because they're on TV, it's not. I don't think that group's ever going to get over at this point. I think it's kind of proven. So, like, you kind of got to pivot and go in a different direction, I think.
Yeah, you would think by now they would have learned that. I mean, it's been a couple months, and they got to do something different, whether it's just juicier storylines or more meaningful storylines. I don't know what it is. Just being put in matches for the sake of matches, which we see in AEW, and even those people are sometimes more over than a lot of the people in WWE, depending on who we're talking about. Does not really equate to, like I see Commander on the show every week in AEW. Do I give a fuck about him? No. I don't give a shit about Commander. Pure Fusion Collective is the same thing, where they're on the show every single week. I don't really give a shit about the group. They're not really doing anything. They're losing, they win, they lose. It's impossible to care. But the last question I'll pose to you as far as that goes, when they go back to 2 hours on October 7th for a 3-month period, because the first Raw on Netflix is January 6th, so almost exactly 3 months, do you think there's a possibility, and I don't really think it's going to happen personally, if they go back to 2 hours and they see that the grass is indeed greener on the other side, that they can make this work, it makes for a better show, people are enjoying it, blah, 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 that they might just keep it 2 hours on Netflix, or more realistically, Netflix is like, listen, we are paying for a 3-hour block of content, we're keeping 3 hours. Regardless of what you do up to this point, we don't give a fuck, but when you come here on January 6th, we are making it 3 hours again. I feel like that's more likely, but you can't rule out the possibility that the WWE might say, hey, 2 hours is better, fans are receiving it better, maybe they won't, I don't know. I'm just saying they could.
I think it just really depends on what's, like you said, it's not like a network that you're like, hey, we're taking these 3 blocks of, like, Netflix doesn't really have live TV, or like, so it's a little bit different, I think. like you said, like it's not like they're on a normal network. It's like, hey, we're taking this 3-hour block with advertisement and all that jazz, like paying the network, da-da-da-da. Like, it's a streaming platform, so it's a little bit different. I hope that if they think the 2 hours is better and it feels like the show is just a more quality show than quantity, I think hopefully that's where they go. But like you said, I think a lot of people think, oh, you got to get everyone on the show, but that doesn't make the show better. Like, you nailed the nail on the head. Like, yeah, it's nice to see, like, Sony and all them, like, Alpha Academy, great for them. I'm glad they're on the show making a living, but, like, does it make the show any better? No. The show would, like you said, probably be better if they weren't on it, because sometimes it's just random matches that I just don't care about.
Yeah, that's what they need to make, be more mindful of starting in October with the 2-hour shows and kind of assess, all right, what's working here, what's not. And I'm not saying they just have to make the most of the time. Like, it's people might see that they go from 3 to 2 hours and think, oh, well, then this Pure Fusion Collective match is going to go from 10 minutes to 5 minutes, and we're going to be back in the Diva days of 90-second women's matches, which we kind of get sometimes anyway, specifically on SmackDown. I'm not saying that. You can give them longer matches, or the men longer matches, or whatever, but it's how you map out the time. It just makes it more challenging. When you have a big roster, specifically on Raw, you got to make it work. If you have to relegate some people to main event, well, then so be it. Alpha Academy, at least to their credit, are over. Pure Fusion Collective, we've been picking on them specifically, so I feel
because
bad.
They're on TV every week, and it's not getting any better.
But it's true. You know what? It's just not over. It's just not clicking. You're right. It's just not working. So these are the things they have to sit down and assess what's working, what's not. And SmackDown obviously can be improved as well. That's not changing. I know there was a rumor this upcoming show on Friday, it's a 3-hour show. No, it was a typo. USA is not making it, at least not imminently, hopefully ever, a 3-hour show. That would be fucking terrible. We do not need more, we need less. And I'm not saying making it an hour, but 2 hours each makes perfect sense. Even back to the AEW thing, all these hours of television, 4 hours here, 3 hours there, Ring of Honor, like, a lot of those hours don't mean anything. That's WWE. In like 2019 when they had 205 Live, and they had NXT UK, and all these other shows, and no one cared about most of it because it wasn't good content. Like, if you make the shows matter, then less can be more, and you can make the most of the time that you're given, I think is our main point here. So we'll see on October 7th. I'm looking forward to Raw being back to 2 hours. It's going to be over at 10. Maybe go to bed nice and a little bit earlier than usual. That would be nice to see. We'll see. But I'm looking forward to that on October 7th. This has been great, Mr. Marceau. I'll have more to talk about next week, I am sure. New episodes every single week, WrestleRant.com, WrestleRantRadio.com. Have a great rest of the week, Mr. Marceau. I'll catch you next Thursday.
All right, see you later, man.
Adios, brother.
Join Graham, GSM Matthews, and RJ Marceau every Thursday as they run down their weekly wrestling rants, offer expert analysis, host exclusive interviews, and more. Subscribe today on all your favorite podcast platforms and never miss an episode of WrestleRant Radio.